Now let's talk about this Uruguay team in particular, Charlie. I'll come to you first. They're really good up the spine of the team, which they're going to challenge us in a lot of different ways. And they won the games that they needed to win. And I like that at the end. They have a little bit of that grit and character. Obviously, they've shown that over the years with this core of players. How do you think this particular team is really going to punish us? Maybe it's our center backs, because with Darwin Nunez, who's crushing it for Benfica, Luis Suarez, Cavani, that could be a good exercise for us, especially if we're thinking about the Irans, who have two top strikers. They'll probably play both at the same time. You see a lot of teams, Harry Kane's going to be the sole number 9, but Iran will probably play with the double striker. Maybe that will benefit us by playing against Uruguay.
I think we stand a better chance of defending a team when they play with a lone striker. We saw Canada when they play with 2. It's difficult because our outside backs get forward so often.
Right.
And especially if you have Dest, Anthony Robinson, I think will be a little bit more honest, but still they get wide and they're responsible for bombing down the flanks. When you leave 2 center backs 2v2 and say it's Tyler Adams 3v2, still you're going to get pulled out of position. And we don't have the quickest of center backs. So I think from that standpoint, I'd rather play a team with 1 striker. I think that will suit us a little bit better. And Cavani, he's not the striker who's going to get on the ball and beat you by 1v1. He's the striker who's going to make hard runs in the box. And if you give Valverde or Rossi or Bentancur or De La Cruz time on the ball, they will pick him out, and then you will be punished. So I like the opponent.
I love it too. I think it's good, great opponent.
I love it because I think Valverde is kind of like the player who's going to be pushing the tempo from the midfield, looking to play in between the lines, and he's not necessarily the Luka Modric, right, for Real Madrid, but he's gifted, and I think it's a good test for the U.S.
Now, he played really well on the wing in leg 1 against Chelsea. They put him out there instead of Asensio. I was like, all right, this guy, he just covers ground. He makes it hard. He makes it difficult for you to play. And then if you give him some time and space, he can hurt you. So I'm kind of curious to see where Fede Valverde ends up setting up for Uruguay, because he can play multiple positions. Heath, how are you feeling about that double striker and us kind of struggling with it? I'm glad Chuck brought that up, because we don't do so well. And actually, when I looked at all the opponents in the Ocho in World Cup qualifying, Canada's the team that I felt like we struggled with in both games, whereas I can't say that for any other opponent that we faced.
Yeah, I mean, just that Uruguay in general is a test for us, which you mentioned, Germany, of a game where they're incrementally better in every position, just a little bit better in a lot of ways. I think we match up on them on the day, but that's a level to which we should aspire to, of just tactically, technically, experience wise, because this team's young enough to get to the Uruguay level, right? They're young enough to get good enough to play against that. And then, I think about the double striker. I still continue to almost wonder to flip the conversation on to us is, would we ever work as a double striker? No. You don't think so?
We don't even have 1. How can we have 2?
Well, we do have one that can hold up the ball.
I love it.
I do like it. I just think about Ricardo Pepi in general, or even Jordan Pifok, of just having somebody closer or around them that's not isolated on the wing, where it's got to be, for us to score goals right now, it's got to be 7-8 passes before we get anywhere near the goal, right? Where there's not a lot of being able to just naturally create. And okay, Landon Donovan as a false 9 or as a 10 playing under a 9, where the ball would just, again, anytime that we've laid the ball off and we're now running at the field, I think has always been a good thing. Having said that, a 2-striker allows you to get into the channels and make more diagonal runs and things like that. But yeah, defensively, I think we struggle matching up one-on-one. We're better when we're balanced. If you're playing against a 2-striker system, do you go with a double pivot in front of that gives you a little bit more protection?
Yeah, a little box there.
I don't know, but again, that's the diversity of opponent where we need to be able to make adjustments. And maybe it is a little bit more of a test where you don't just play the defensive from the start and actually see how your team can match up against that, to see if we've gotten better, to see how now with if it was Robinson and Zimmerman, how they could sort of be better balanced against a 2-striker setup and understand when one peels off the shoulder to drop into the midfield, how your midfielders react, or if one's checking and one's going in behind you, how we're actually handling all of that, because the game is very different. You don't see a lot of proper 2-striker setups or even sort of hybrid 2-striker setups anymore.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because Zimmerman didn't play against Canada in either one of those games, and I wonder what his influence may or may not have done. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything, but he does have some of that leadership gravitas that I think does keep everybody.
But I don't remember, Jimmy, are those center backs ever having to get pulled in and out of positions very, very often, right? In those games that Zimmerman did play. In games where you play against two strikers, you've got a lot of split-second decisions you've got to make communication-wise where you get pulled off for 1 second and you leave a 5-yard gap in between the lines and you've got your second striker running into that space, or now someone's trying to hold the line. There's a lot of things that go into that between those center backs that they haven't had to face together yet in terms of being like, I got a man. Oh, I got a man. Now what do we do? You know?
No, I'm setting the line.
Yeah. Well, that, and also England, that's another number 9 in Harry Kane that drops into the space. I mean, their runners come from outside to in, right? Because they're running more from the wing, but still that communication is going to be of the utmost importance to solve some problems. But I think we can all agree that Uruguay is a great opponent, and hopefully they get that all solidified and we get to see a great match